My name's Ross and I'm a cybersecurity consultant, and this today is my talk on my route into cyber, with a little pun there for the hackers I want to use. So at a high level, essentially I started out in oil and gas and I'm now a Pentester. And today the talk's just essentially just about how I went from doing that into doing what I do now. Travelled quite a while to get here, all the way from Scotland, as you can probably tell in my accent. I am glad to be doing it face to face because doing it on Teams does not work. I work for a company down in Cheltenham, and I can tell you that on Teams, when you use the transcribe and I speak, it is a disaster. So yeah, you always get a laugh when you look at the notes afterwards and the transcribe watching me talk. So yeah, I'm happy to do it face to face. Any questions afterwards, feel free to shout out. Glad this is working now. So just a quick introduction. So like I said, I started in oil and gas as a process technician, so that kind of involved just making sure that the plant was running smoothly. So things like I used to jump up and down distillation columns, turning valves and preventing leaks. And I transitioned into a pen tester a few years ago. So I'm now an ethical hacker, cybersecurity consultant, now specialising in web application security. So this presentation today is predominantly, the purpose of this is just, it's not to be like, you know, look at what I've done. The reason for it is because I think there's a big misconception out there about a lot of people who think that maybe, you know, it's maybe too much of a jump to jump into a new industry, regardless of whether it's from another industry into cyber or another industry into something completely different. The point of this presentation is really to show that there's a lot of, you know, overlap between soft skills from what I was doing previously and what I do now, and how the 9 years I spent in oil and gas wasn't a waste of time. So just a rundown from the start, really. So I was in engineering as a youngster. School, I was right into, I wanted to be a mechanical engineer. And I think it's kind of drilled into you from a young age that, you know, university is the way to go. And there is truth in that, but I've seen the uni fees, and when I was looking into it, I applied for an apprenticeship with BP, was offered and I was successful. And I decided to pursue that. Now, there's a story here that's quite funny, and to kind of elaborate on that a bit, and it was because when I was in high school in my final year, I got put forward for an Arkwright engineering scholarship through Heriot-Watt University, and I got the scholarship, and when I was presented with it at Heriot-Watt, they came up and asked, "Oh, you know, what would you like to do?" And at this point, I'd already been sort of offered my BP apprenticeship, and I'd said, "Look, I'm going to do a process technician apprenticeship with BP." They went, "Oh, great." And then when they presented me with it, they said, "This is Ross, and he's away to do a master's degree in mechanical engineering at Heriot-Watt University." I was like, so that's not good enough then, clearly. So yeah, that was a bit of a funny one, and that was kind of set the stage for going forward. So, like I say, my early career was focused on, through college, it was industrial systems and troubleshooting. And I've led various projects through years, through ATEX tablet implementations from secure zones, through to basically decommissioning of plants and recommissioning through shutdowns. This kind of leads on to the kind of starting of how the soft skills really kind of helps me in my day-to-day life now, and I'll talk about it going forward. So when I was sort of working in oil and gas with the company that I was working with, the ATEX rated tablet project that I was working on during a secondment with the engineering team, I was working with the sort of head management in order to implement updating technologies. And this was really, I felt really passionate about this, having been jumping up and down columns in a pair of overalls to working with tech for the first time. I really loved it, I thought it was great, and I really wanted to pursue that. But funnily enough, I couldn't pursue the engineering thing without a degree. Funny. So I then said, well, I quite fancy doing a degree, looked at part-time and then seen one in cyber. I was like, well, why not just completely change it? Once you sort of get into the mindset of, you want to change things, you start looking at things in a different light. So I started seeing like a lot of the IT processes at the company that I was working for that weren't necessarily, I never really looked at before. And things like the processes and the way that things were done started to frustrate me a bit. And I think when you sort of start, you start looking at things and you maybe start doubting yourself, going, well, I absolutely know nothing about this. And there was one time that I started studying, and then I phoned up the IT help desk at the work because I needed to issue a permit, and I couldn't issue a permit because there was no internet. Done a bit of troubleshooting and found that the DNS server hadn't been configured. And I phoned them up and said, listen, the DNS server's not been configured. And the guy in the help desk went, what's that? And I was like, maybe I'm not a bot after all. So I think those little things really reinforce like, oh, actually, I kind of know a little thing, maybe not a lot, but it kind of pushes you to sort of move forward and to really believe in yourself. So this is where, when I started moving out, I thought, right, I want to make a change here, and I want to do something that I really enjoy in my life. Life's too short, and I really want to sort of make a difference here. So I started looking at loads of YouTube videos. So things like the Cyber Mentor, John Hammond, IPSEC, 12-hour ethical hacking courses, Try Hack Me, Hack the Box, that kind of stuff. And got really obsessed with it and started building essentially a wiki on like my own notes. And the thought process with that was me sort of even starting to go, well, in a couple of years' time, if I was in the same situation, what would benefit me? There's a lot of people around about me that were kind of that I would lean on, ask questions, and that would support me. And I wanted that if I did sort of do well in this industry, that I could sort of give back. And I was thinking about that at sort of the really early stages. So sort of fast forward, I was studying a part-time degree alongside doing sort of Hack the Box labs, Try Hack Me labs in my spare time. Thankfully, all that paid off, and I got an interview with Cyberus, who I'm currently with now. And I started in their academy program in May 2022 as a junior consultant. Spent a few months sort of solidifying knowledge that I'd already built through the labs, through my degree and stuff like that as well. And then in November, I got promoted to consultant and started actually working on engagements and delivering jobs for clients. And a couple of months later, I passed the CSTM, the Cyber Scheme Team Member exam, in January 2023. So that had been about 7 months after I just started in the industry. And I think this was a big turning point for me, because when I passed that, it was kind of like, I'd put so much effort in over the last few years that was like the sort of rubber stamp to say, well, actually, again, you do know something. So it's just those little things through time that sort of give you those little bumps over the imposter syndrome, which I still get every day, but, we move. So since then, I continue to try and develop myself, and get better at my job in different aspects, become a better consultant, become a better technical consultant, and also like client-facing consultancy skills. I've been promoted to senior consultant, where I mentor a couple of juniors. I'm on the QA panel, and I'm a service line leader for Google Cloud and Training and Development, and specialise in web application pen testing, having passed the Cyber Scheme Team Leader web application exam January this year. Exactly to the day 2 years after I passed my CSTM, which was pretty cool. So I'm just going to sort of like recap on everything. So the soft skills that I've learned in my previous role that I spent 9 years in, it's kind of like, well, why wait 9 years to make that transition? And the soft skills are really everything. And I think Debbie earlier on in our presentation made a really fair point about how cyber is really moving, not necessarily away from technical, but really sort of trying to hit home that the soft skills and everything that goes along with communication, professional skills are really pertinent to what makes a good consultant these days and a cyber professional. So all these things like the process logic for, like, for example, understanding how a pump is started, and the methodology that goes behind that is really similar to the methodology that I've built around hacking web applications. So those things are transferable. It's the same for like managing projects. It's the same as managing like client engagements and stuff like that. So everything's transferable. Yes, okay, I wasn't necessarily hacking web applications in an oil refinery. However, it's building those skills that you can sort of move into a different career and take that with you, rather than just say, well, that's a write-off, that's a waste of time, I've just wasted 9 years. It's not like that at all. And it took me a few years to understand that, because I think a lot of the imposter syndrome kicks in when you've got a lot of people that have got more technical experience than you. It's just about trying to overcome that and say, well, do you know what, I can bring something to the table as well. This is true. I get this every day. I'm getting this now because I'm sitting thinking, well, what gives me a right to stand up and talk to you guys about, how I've done it. But the truth is that I'm doing this because I want, if there's a chance that someone here takes something away from this and goes, well, do you know what, this is something that I can do, and this is something that I can develop on and end up landing a role in cyber, that's excellent. I've mentored an individual over the last year or so who has just recently, I worked beside him, and he started studying for the CPTS and the OSCP, and he's passed it 12 months later, which is absolutely phenomenal. Hearing these stories about people, like you read an article that I wrote, and that I can influence that change in people's is great, and that's really what I'm here to do. So again, I've touched on that. So he's kind of part of a group of individuals that I mentor that are sort of transitioning into cybersecurity professionalism. And like I say, it's just about, there's a lot of people that were around trying to support me and that I could lean on and ask for advice and ask for support. And I think it's just about me trying to give back, and that's really what I'm trying to do here. So I think looking at the future, I'm just going to continue to keep doing that. I'd continue to improve on being a well-rounded consultant, so looking at things like the CRTO, different exams as well, to become dual certified potentially, CSCL infrastructure, with more exposure to red team operations as well. So this is my socials. This is not malware, I promise you. I can assure you. You're probably going to be really disappointed when you look at it, because it's just a picture of me with some LinkedIn profiles. The next slide is just asking any questions. So I just wanted to say thanks to B-Sides for having me today. Big thanks to PRPR and Cybers for supporting me as well. And yeah, do we have any questions at all? Me first. We'll go front back.
On your slide about how you got into things, YouTube, Hackbox, all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
All good things, and you mentioned Cybermentor, Jump Hammer. Is there anything you would say that wasn't as good as these things? Is there anything you would say, do ABC, but this is...
That's a good question. I think it depends on what stage that you're at, right? Because I think it depends on, like, there's loads of people that come in from, for example, a software development background who know a lot about web applications. You've got people that come in and absolutely know nothing about Linux, for example, the stage that I was at. I've mentored people who have come in from both aspects, and depending on where they come in at, I've even had cybersecurity graduates come up and ask me questions not knowing how Kali Linux works, which is incredible. And sort of, I think it really depends on where you are in your career at that point, and sort of each of those different things are going to benefit you differently. So for someone starting out, I would look at, like Try Hack Me's big, complete beginner pathway, which introduces you to web proxies, basics of Linux, basics of Windows command line, things like that. For someone who's, got a really good software development background, it might be worth looking at more sort of understanding how their software development background and web applications can be used to look at the different exploits, for example, secure coding to understand how to mitigate against cross-site scripting attacks, SQL injection attacks, that sort of thing. So, I think for like a complete beginner, Try Hack Me is ideal. I think once you sort of progress through that, Hack the Box Labs is great, the Hack the Box Academy is great, and looking at box walkthroughs from like IPSEC and the 12-hour Cybermentor ethical hacking course, which teaches you basics of Python. Again, like a video demonstration of basic web proxies and how to set them up and stuff like that is really good as well. So it just depends on your learning style and what stage that you're at in your career, I would say. Does that?
That's good.
You're not tempted to try to get industrial control systems and sort of combine the skills, or?
Yes, very much so. But it's niche. It's very niche. It's something that I've looked at doing quite a lot, but it's one of them that I'm trying to sort of walk before I can run. It's something that I'd really like to narrow down on. We've got a couple of clients who potentially would be interested in that kind of thing, and it's just about sort of making myself available for that kind of work. There are SANS courses on that, but they're on upwards of 10 grand, so investment sort of thing. But it definitely is answer to your question. That is something I've looked at quite a few times actually.
You did answer a lot of the stuff I was going to ask anyway, but we hear a lot about the skills gap, there being that gap between academic and theoretical knowledge, and then all the practical stuff that you were saying with the labs and stuff. What would be the best piece of advice if you've got someone in front of you who has got all that theoretical knowledge, they've just graduated, but they're still asking those quite basic questions about what Linux is? What, apart from just the technical programs, that person as an individual, what would you say to them to go out and do and learn?
Again, a good question. From a content perspective, I think Try Hack Me is a really good place to start. I know that the cyber scheme do a foundational exam, and I think that's a really sort of a good benchmark, I would say, to look for. You don't want to aim too high and sort of like discourage yourself, I think, because that's, once you look at one thing and you realise how much you don't know, that can be quite off-putting. So I think just sort of looking at your goals realistically and understanding where you want to be and just taking it one step at a time, I think that's a really good place to start. I think, again, I know it's not necessarily content related, but get a mentor, get someone who is in the industry that knows something that can really sort of, that you can lean on, that you can ask, my proxy's not working, why is it not working? And it could be something as stupid as, because you've not set the port correctly, and that could set you back hours and hours and hours of, learning. Obviously it's different, you want to really try and, do what you can and figure it out yourself, but, if you can find a mentor that's really willing to help and that you can lean on and they can share their experience and really help you along the way, I think that's really beneficial to people starting out, and it can really shape sort of the way that you want to go forward.
In regards to your soft skills, did you just trust that they'd come into play, or did you find a way to push them forward before your technical skills caught up? Is that?
Yeah, the thing is that the technical skills was what caused the imposter syndrome, right? Yeah. And I think that, when I landed in that role, it was kind of like the imposter syndrome stemmed from the degree of, I don't know this about this. Once you've sort of got that under control to a degree, you can then start trusting what you already know and start going, well, actually, the questions of, I'm not capable of doing this or I'm not capable of doing that. Once you sort of overcome those goals, you can start giving yourself credit for stuff that you've done in the past rather than looking at it, oh, I've wasted all this time. It's just a complete mindset shift, really. It's difficult, but I think it's sort of the confidence bit versus imposter syndrome balance that's really sort of, it takes time to overcome, but it's only through time and sort of confidence in your ability that you can really sort of trust that.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.